Hello, and welcome back to DLA Alternative. It's your boy Brandon, and I hope everyone is doing phenomenal as always. And thank you to everyone who keeps subscribing, liking, and following this journey with us. We are on the road to 2K, people, and I got a big one for you today. Yes, as you can tell by the title and thumbnail, we got an interesting one, and this is also kind of going to be a theory / Stranger Things secret video. And I know it's been a while since we've done this, but I know you guys love those ones in the past involving our hand, involving the weird spy that maybe Vecna has with that random cop and some other ones. So go check those ones out, people. They're interesting. There's only a few of those, but I wanted to jump back in with this one because this one is very interesting. And I honestly just caught this a specific way. So with that being said, as you can tell by the title, yes, this involves Hawkins Middle School. Okay, so we're going to jump to the scene when Will is about to be infected. And this episode is Season 2, Chapter 3, The Pollywog, okay? And it's kind of towards the middle / the end. But we are going to jump to the scene when Will comes across Dart, okay? And we know that there's this random connection to Dart and Will that they have, and we don't know how, we don't know what this is about, so that's something in Season 5 we need to see, people. But more importantly, okay, during this scene, all right, Will's searching, all right, in his area, and then he goes into that bathroom by Salerno's room or whatever. I think that's the teacher. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think it's Salerno's room. I haven't watched the scene pre to filming this, so if you're impressed by this, yes, I did all this without rewatching this scene. This is just from memory, so just keep that in mind. But during the scene, okay, as Will goes into that bathroom, he searches every stall, okay? So keep that in mind. That's important. And then he goes to that last stall and he comes across Dart. But what's interesting about this, okay, all of a sudden Will looks at him. He's kind of nervous, and because he knows that he remembers this from the sound that he was hearing and also from the fact that he saw the Mind Flayer during all of this. But more importantly, all of a sudden he says to Dart, he goes, "I'm not going to hurt you." And he's real calm. You know, he's trying to be nice. He's kind of being like Dustin, all right? But then what does Dart do, people, okay? Because all of a sudden Dart takes a turn and he kind of just makes this loud screech. So he doesn't trust Will, which is very interesting if you ask me. But basically Dart doing this, okay, it startles Will really bad, all right? And then what does he do, people? He drops this walkie-talkie, okay? So this is the big thing I want you to pay attention to. Right when all of this happens, okay, Will drops this walkie-talkie and we get a little quick flash of this, okay? So that's very important to this because then all of a sudden Will runs out, he runs away from Dart, he runs out of that bathroom, takes a quick breath, and then what happens? Bada bada boom, he gets sent back into the upside down, into a vision, okay? And then all of a sudden he sees the Mind Flayer, kind of part of the Mind Flayer, go around the corner in the hallway and it chases him, okay? And real quickly, what I want to connect here is this is something we kind of see all the way in Season 4 involving Vecna. And I'm not saying Henry Creel or number 1, I'm saying Vecna. So this, in my opinion, gives us a strong connection to what we see Vecna do and what the Mind Flayer is doing to Will in this season. What he does is he's trying to lure him by getting him afraid in a way, all right? And he's showing him flashes into something that traumatized Will when in Season 1, okay, being in the Upside Down. So this, in my opinion, is a very interesting connection, if you ask me, but let me know your thoughts so far. But as the scene continues, okay, we see Will run out of the bathroom, right? And he's getting chased. And then all of a sudden he runs outside and he runs to the field. And we know this. But as this episode continues, okay, we see Dustin end up going into this bathroom. And Will reported to all of them that this was Salerno's bathroom. I hope I'm right. But we see and hear Will tell all of them this on the walkie-talkie right before all of this goes down and right before he drops it, okay? But what I want you to keep in mind is that as Will's running out to that field, okay, he did not have that walkie-talkie with him. Remember that, all right? Then all of a sudden, like I said, Dustin runs into that bathroom because that's where Will told them to go, and the rest of them are all on their way there, okay? But Dustin ends up getting there first and finding Dart, and we know this whole scene. He ends up finding Dart, he makes sure he's okay, and Dart trusts Dustin in this scene. So he didn't trust Will for some reason, who he has a direct connection to as far as we know. But he does trust the one that's been taking care of him, being Dustin, okay? So keep that in mind. It's very interesting, and I wonder if we're going to see a strong connection of this in Season 5 one way or another. But more importantly, as Dustin does this, he does basically the same thing Will did. He looks through every stall, and then he ends up coming across Dart, and then he hides him, okay? And the reason he hides him is why? Because like Dart trusts him, he's the one protecting him, okay? So he puts him under his hat away from his group. So basically, Dustin is kind of lying, and friends don't lie. So Dustin's doing something wrong here, and he knows he is. But more importantly, Dustin is still being a friend and trying to be a protector. So that's very interesting here. But as the group walks in, being Mike, Lucas, and Max, okay, they're like, well, where's Dart? Where's Dart? And Mike starts searching all the stalls, okay? And then all of a sudden, Mike looks at Dustin, he says, where's Dart? And he goes, I don't know. And that's the big lie that we see in this scene. But then Max says something interesting, and she mentions the walkie-talkie conversation that Will just had with them, saying that wasn't it by Salerno's room, okay? The bathroom by Salerno's room. I really hope I'm right about that. But more importantly, people, okay, she says this and she mentions that they all just heard this, okay? But what you got to keep in mind, people, is what is not happening here at all. And if you have not noticed it yet, what is happening here, people? Not a single one of them have mentioned Will's walkie that should be directly on the floor right in front of that stall where Dart was, right? We saw Will drop his walkie-talkie, like I mentioned, and we see this in the show, okay? And then Will runs out, all of a sudden goes into a flash and runs away and runs outside to the field. And in my opinion, it's very interesting that we see this scene, and then we also see Chrissy later in season 4 walk out to the field, which is somewhat similar, and I believe they use the same exact area, but it's two different schools. But in my opinion, it's extremely interesting that this location is used like that, kind of, okay? So just keep that in mind. But more importantly, people, have you not noticed that not a single one of them have mentioned this, okay? Because this gets real interesting, and there's proof that something weird is going on, and we don't have an answer to it. There is proof there's a major secret of something we don't know anything about that we should have an answer to in season 5. And if we don't, then there's going to be no explanation to what happens here. Because right after Max mentions Will's name, all of a sudden Mike snaps into reality. And what happens? He asks, he goes, well, where's Will? And logically, people, none of them even thought of this. And why? Because that walkie, like I said, should be right on the floor there. So they should have seen that and known something was wrong involving Will. However, Will's walkie, for some reason, is not in this bathroom. And there's proof of this, okay, because of what happens next. Because as the scene continues, except this chapter comes to an end and it begins with Will the Wise, the next chapter, the very beginning of that chapter starts with Joyce rushing to the school, okay? And then all of a sudden they're on the field, and who's with him, all right? They're all looking for Will. They're trying to find Will at the very beginning, and then Dustin and Joyce end up meeting in the hallway, and then Lucas runs in and says, the field, the field. But as they run out to the field, what ends up happening, people? Mike is out there, okay, with Will, and we get this real quickly, but if you're not paying attention and do not look at Will's feet, you would not see this. Mike has his walkie in his hand, Dustin has his headset, Lucas has his own walkie, Max doesn't have one, Joyce doesn't have one, but whose is by Will's feet? Will's walkie-talkie, people, is by his feet. And how did it get there? Because we get proof that he dropped it. They show us this on purpose. So logically, people, the biggest question here that you need to answer, and I want to know your thoughts about, is who moved the walkie-talkie and let this all happen a certain way? We've been talking about certain things like this in the Owens theory, that I think Owens is trying to let things happen a certain way throughout this whole season. So with that being said, are there some more secrets that we could find in these schools about certain things that need to happen in a certain way, or certain secrets that we just really don't know a lot about? Because no doubt in my mind, people, they show us Will drop that walkie-talkie. So there's no reason in the world that this is an error that was in there, okay? There's no reason in the world. They show us him drop it, and then all of a sudden, people, his walkie is sitting there by his feet. However, I do have an answer that might blow your minds, and it might be a little bit interesting, and it could connect season 1 to a character in a way as well. And if you analyze this show like I do, you would have caught on already, because there's one mysterious character that is also involved here, okay, that we don't know and don't see a lot of, but all of a sudden we see this character see our group again for the first time. And yes, you already know I'm talking about, being our girl 11. Right before and while all of this happens, okay, 11 11 leaves the cabin, goes to the school, and that's when all of that happens, when she sees Mike and makes Max fall off the skateboard in the gym. So logically, people, 11 is near all of this while this is happening for some reason, right? And Will is by himself in a certain area of the school. So the biggest question is, people, is there's this mystery of how 11 and Will knew each other, how 11 knew Will specifically in season 1. When she sees the picture in Mike's room, she knows who Will is, and we never get an answer to that. And I know we're going to in season 5. We just have to. But the thing that's interesting about this season, people, is that we really don't see 11 and Will cordially meet, okay? Will is passed out, infected by the Mind Flayer, and he is drugged up because Joyce did that to him, to obviously keep him asleep while they are at the house trying to figure out what to do with him, okay? And then 11 comes in and tries to save the day, right? That is the actual first time we ever see 11 and Will meet, but they do not get a chance to actually cordially meet or talk, correct? And the thing about that is we know 11 knows about Will one way or another. She knows things about Will, and we don't have answers to this, people. But the biggest question is did 11 see this happen? And what I mean by that is, did 11 somehow see Will running through the school, know who Will was, and go follow him to try and figure out how to help him once again, maybe? And what I mean by that is did we not see something happen in season 1 that maybe 11 might have tried to help Will, and that could have resulted in him vanishing for some reason? She says all throughout season 1 and looks at herself like a monster, like she did something wrong, and then we know she miraculously just knows Will one way or another. But then now I'm catching this, that this walkie-talkie for some reason jumped from this bathroom, okay? Will gets in a vision, goes outside, does not bring it with him, but then this walkie-talkie is by his feet. And you might be thinking, oh, well, maybe they just didn't show us that in the bathroom. No, I'm calling bullshit on that, okay? There's a reason this is filmed and done the way this is. And there is proof to this because of what Mike says here, because he says to Joyce, I just found him like this. And in my opinion, people, that's more than enough proof to me with that line right there, that he ended up just finding Will just like that, being with that walkie-talkie right by his feet that none of them noticed in the bathroom, okay? So just let me know your thoughts, people. I hope you guys like this one. This was kind of a shorter one, but I have been holding off on this one because I've been wanting to figure out a way to tell you guys and how to film this. But I think I'm onto something with this one, and I think there's some weird shit going on in these schools, and there's something that's weird in the high school as well that I'm going to make another video for very, very soon. So go take a look at that high school and try starting to review it. And let me know if you come across anything, because there's a major secret that there are things being watched in that school. That's all I'm going to tell you, fam. So with that being said, I hope you guys like this one. Keep subscribing, liking, following this journey, and I love each and every single one of you, and you guys already know, we out.